Up until now, we have walked through the harsh childhoods of Spartan boys, the sacrifice of King Leonidas, and the shadows of Spartan ritual. But to truly understand Sparta, we must also see the contrasts within its society, the privileged citizens, the enslaved helots, the unique role of women, and the unusual simplicity of elite life. The layers of Spartan society. Spartan society was divided into distinct classes. At the very top were the Spartiates, the full citizens, men who had endured the agoge and proved themselves in discipline and loyalty. They alone had the right to vote, to hold office, to shape policy. Below them were the Perioiko, meaning those who dwell around. They lived in the surrounding towns and villages, not in Sparta's core. They were free, not enslaved, but they were not full citizens. They worked as craftsmen, traders, and farmers. It was often the Perioiko who made the goods that Sparta itself disdained. Commerce, craftsmanship, even trade with other Greek cities. And beneath them, at the bottom, were the helots. These were the enslaved people, often from conquered territories like Messenia. They worked the land, toiled in the fields, harvested the grain and olives. It was their labor that sustained Spartan society. Without them, the system of warriors could not exist. And yet, they lived in constant fear, watched, controlled, and sometimes violently reminded of their subjugation. The life of a Spartiate full citizen. Now, imagine yourself not as a boy in the agoge, but as an adult Spartiate. You are 30 years old. You have survived your training. You have fought in battles. You are finally permitted to live in your own home, to share your life more openly with your wife and family. But still, the state holds you. You continue to eat at communal messes, where the same black broth is served day after day. You continue to train, to drill, to keep your body and mind ready for war. Even as an elite, your life is not one of comfort. Sparta does not encourage wealth in the way other cities do. Gold and silver are forbidden, and money is deliberately made of bulky iron bars, so heavy and impractical that hoarding riches is nearly impossible. Your house is simple: stone walls, a hearth, modest furnishings. There is no marble, no painted frescoes, no golden statues. Luxury is discouraged, simplicity enforced. To outsiders, it seems austere. To Spartans, it is natural. The role of Spartan women, yet, within these homes, another contrast emerges. Spartan women lived lives unlike most in the Greek world. Imagine a woman in Athens, her life confined to the house, uneducated, her voice absent in public matters. Now, imagine a woman in Sparta, strong, educated, often outspoken. Spartan girls, like boys, were encouraged to train their bodies. They ran, they threw discus, they wrestled. They were taught to value strength, for strong women were believed to bear strong children. They received education in reading, writing, and music. They could own land, inherit property, and manage estates. In fact, by some accounts, Spartan women controlled nearly a third of the land in later centuries. To outsiders, this was shocking. Women speaking their minds, owning wealth, moving with freedom. To Spartans, it was practical. With men away in barracks or at war, women needed to manage the household, the land, the wealth. Their independence was not luxury, it was necessity. Even their voices carried power. Mothers were known to give their sons a shield before battle with the famous words, "With it or on it," a reminder to return victorious or not at all. This was not cruelty. It was the Spartan way, carried even in a mother's love. The helots lives in the shadows, and yet the harshest contrast of all lies in the lives of the Helots. Imagine rising at dawn in the fields of Messenia, the earth damp with morning dew, the air heavy with the smell of soil and barley. You bend your back to the plow, day after day, knowing the harvest is not yours to keep. The grain you grow feeds the Spartans. The olives you press fill their tables. Your labor gives them freedom, while binding you in toil. Fear is constant. The Cryptia reminds you that even at night, even in sleep, you are never beyond the reach of Spartan control. Revolts are whispered about, but always crushed with brutal efficiency. You live, generation after generation, in service to a state that defines itself by your subjugation. Without the Helots, Sparta could not exist. Yet their names are lost to history, their voices silent. The contrast of privilege and simplicity, the great paradox of Sparta is this: the elites were privileged, yet not indulgent. They had power, yet not luxury. Their lives were built upon the labor of others, yet their own existence was stripped of wealth and softness. A society of contradictions, rigid simplicity for the few, relentless toil for the many. And in this contrast, we see the uniqueness of Sparta. Not Athens, with its marble temples and philosophers. Not Corinth, with its bustling trade. Sparta stood apart, a city that chose discipline over beauty, order over comfort, war over wealth. As we step back from the world of Sparta, the echoes of its rhythms still linger. The cries of children taken to the agode, the clash of bronze shields at Thermopylae, the chants rising at the altar of Artemis Orthia, the whispered commands in the night of the Cryptia, and the silent labor of Helots in the fields. Sparta was not a place of comfort. It was a place of endurance, a society where every moment was a test, every life a sacrifice for the state. It is remembered in legend as glorious, but in reality it was relentless. And yet, from this relentless way of life came a story that endured for centuries. The image of men standing against overwhelming odds, the discipline of silence, the strength of women, the power of unity. But now, as you rest, you can let those images fade. The stones of Sparta are ruins now. The voices of its people long vanished. Only the lessons remain, carried gently through time. Take a slow breath, let it fill your chest, and exhale gently, releasing the weight of Sparta from your thoughts. You do not need to march barefoot over stones. You do not need to eat black broth by firelight. You do not need to stand in the pass of Thermopylae. You are here in the quiet of the present. Your body is safe, your bed is warm, your breath is steady. As the story of Sparta dissolves into silence, allow your mind to wander into dreams. There are no battles left to fight tonight. Only peace, only rest, only sleep. Good night. As the clamor of Thermopylae fades from our minds, let us drift into the quieter, stranger world of Spartan ritual and culture. For while the Spartans are remembered most as warriors, their society was not only about battle, it was also about mystery rituals, traditions, and practices that were as important to their identity as the spear and shield. Sparta left behind very little in its own words. Unlike Athens, there are no vast libraries of plays, speeches, or philosophical treatises. What we know comes from fragments, from outsiders who watched them with a mixture of awe and unease, and from the faint traces unearthed by archaeologists centuries later. This veil of mystery makes every detail precious. The Cryptia, One of the most whispered about institutions of Sparta was the cryptia. Imagine yourself, no longer a boy, but a young man recently graduated from the agoge. You have endured hunger, pain, silence, but one final test remains. At night, you are cloaked and sent into the countryside, alone or with a small band. Your mission is not written clearly. It is passed down in whispers. Some say it is to harden you, to teach stealth, patience, and fearlessness. Others say it was a darker practice, meant to keep the Helitsta enslaved population in constant terror, reminding them of their place. The truth remains uncertain, but the effect is undeniable. For the young men chosen, the cryptia was a shadowy passage into adulthood. For the Helots, it was a reminder that even in the quiet of night, Sparta's hand was never far. Historians still debate, was it training, policing, or ritualized cruelty? The answer may be all three. The festival of Artemis Orthia. Spartan religion, too, had its own character. They worshipped the same Olympian gods as the rest of Greece's, Apollo, Athenaba, often with rituals that set them apart. One of the most striking was the festival of Artemis Orthia. Picture a sanctuary just outside Sparta, near the banks of the Eurotas River, the air thick with incense, the sound of flutes echoing in rhythm, the chanting of priests and priestesses filling the space. Before the altar, Spartan boys stood to be tested. Some accounts describe trials of endurance, where youths would face pain or hardship in public, cheered on not with pity, but with approval. These were not spectacles of cruelty in the Spartan mind. They were affirmations of discipline, of loyalty, of strength. Archaeologists working in the area have uncovered small votive offerings, figurines of warriors, clay masks, fragments of bronze, each one a silent witness to centuries of ritual. When you hold one in your imagination, you can almost feel the rough texture, see the fingerprints of the artisan who shaped it, hear the murmur of prayers rising into the air. Communal meals. The Sicessa daily life also carried ritual elements. Especially in the Sicessa too, the communal meals required of every Spartan man. Imagine entering a low hall at dusk, oil lamps flickering against stone walls. Men sit side by side, the air heavy with the smell of broth, barley bread, and olives. There is no indulgence, no excess. Each man contributes to the meal from his share of land or spoils, and each eats the same modest fare. Conversation is measured, restrained. Perhaps a sharp remark, a brief jest, but nothing more. To outsiders, this seems dull, even joyless. But to Spartans, it was essential, a ritual of equality, a constant reminder that no man, not even a king, stood apart from the collective. The mystery of Spartan silence, another unique feature of Spartan culture, was its reverence for silence. Boys were taught not to chatter, but to answer briefly, with precision. The world came to call this laconic speech. Imagine being asked a question and being expected to reply with one cutting phrase, never with a ramble. It was not just communication, it was discipline turned into words. This silence itself became a ritual. Over time, it shaped the very identity of Sparta. In Athens, words and speeches filled the air. In Sparta, silence was golden, and brevity was power. Archaeological traces, much of what we know of these practices comes from fragments, shards of pottery, ruined temples, inscriptions worn faint with age. In some places, only the faint outlines of sanctuaries remain, stones half buried in earth, whispers of rituals long vanished. When archaeologists lift these pieces from the soil, they are not just studying objects, they are listening to echoes. A clay figurine of Artemis tells us of offerings once laid in devotion. A shard of painted pottery found near the Eurotas hints at feasts or festivals now lost. Each fragment is a doorway into a culture at once disciplined and enigmatic. The atmosphere of Spartan rituals. If you close your eyes, you can almost feel it, the cool stone underfoot as you stand in a sanctuary, the scent of smoke from torches rising into the night, the sound of distant chants carried on the breeze. These were not spectacles meant to entertain, but moments of Bundinga society renewing its identity, generation after generation, through shared ritual. Sparta was a city of warriors, yes, but it was also a city of secrets, shaped not only by the clang of weapons, but by the quiet of mystery. And it is, perhaps, in these shadows, in the half-remembered festivals, the whispered traditions, the fragments unearthed, that we see the truest Sparta, disciplined, secretive, unyielding, and forever just out of reach. As we leave behind the image of Spartan boys enduring the harsh rigors of the agoge, let us shift our focus to one man, a figure who, though shaped by the same system, would rise to embody the spirit of Sparta in one of history's most remembered moments. His name was Leonidas. Leonidas was not born to be king. He was the third son of a ruling family, and his chances of inheriting the throne were slim. Yet, in Sparta, fate often turned upon death, succession, and the relentless demands of politics. When his elder brothers passed away, Leonidas was thrust forward. By the early 5th century BCE, he was king of one of Sparta's dual monarchies. For Sparta was unusual. Two kings ruled together, each from a different royal family, balancing power, yet both still bound by the iron laws of the state. Leonidas was no stranger to hardship. Unlike many kings of other lands, he had endured the agoge. He had eaten the same black broth, run the same barefoot miles, and felt the same lash of discipline as every Spartan boy. His kingship did not shield him from the harshness of Spartan life. Instead, it demanded more of him. The great test of his rule came in 480 BCE during the Persian Wars. Imagine, if you will, a map of the ancient world. To the east stretched the Persian Empire, vast, wealthy, and powerful, spanning from the borders of India to the coastlines of Ionia. Its ruler, Xerxes, commanded resources and armies that seemed endless to the smaller Greek city-states. The Persians demanded submission. Some Greek cities bent the knee, but others, including Sparta, refused. To bow to Persia was unthinkable. To fight, however, was perilous. And so the Greeks sought to resist, not with open field battles, but with strategy. The pass of Thermopylae was chosen, a narrow gateway between mountain and sea, where numbers would matter less and discipline could hold. Now imagine standing in that pass. The mountains rise sharply on one side, the waters of the Malian Gulf stretching out on the other. The path between is tight, so narrow in places that only a few men could stand abreast. The air is heavy with salt, pine, and dust. Cicadas hum in the dry brush, and into this narrow corridor march the Spartans and their allies, no more than a few thousand men in total, facing an enemy that ancient writers claimed numbered in the hundreds of thousands. At their head is Leonidas, not a young man. He is in his 40s, grizzled by years of training and experience. His body bears the marks of disciplines. His gaze is steady, his words few. To his men, he is not a distant ruler. He is one of them, bound by the same hardships, ready to die as they must. For several days, the Spartans hold the pass, shield to shield. They stand in formation. Bronze gleams in the sunlight, spears thrust forward in unison. The Persians attack in waves, their arrows darkening the sky, their warriors pressing forward again and again. Yet the Spartans repel them, their discipline unbroken. Imagine the rhythm of it, the steady clash of bronze against bronze, the cries of exertion, the dull thud of bodies against shields. Dust rises, sweat drips, throats grow dry. And yet, in that narrow space, the vast Persian army cannot break through. The days blur together. Hunger gnaws at the stomach. Exhaustion weighs upon every limb. But the training of the agoge, the endless years of hardship, have prepared the Spartans for exactly this, to endure beyond the limits of ordinary men. And then, betrayal. A local man, seeking reward from Xerxes, reveals a hidden mountain path that bypasses the pass. The Persians seize the opportunity, sending troops to encircle the defenders. When Leonidas learns of this, he understands what it means. The pass will be lost. He gathers his men. Some allies are dismissed, sent home to live and fight another day. But he, with his 300 Spartans, remains. To retreat is not in the Spartan code. To die in service of the state is not failure, is fulfillment. Imagine that final morning, the air cool, the sea glittering faintly in the distance. The Spartans ready themselves, their cloaks crimson against the dust. There is no chatter, no visible fear, only calm acceptance. The battle that follows is desperate. Surrounded, outnumbered, the Spartans fight to the last. Leonidas himself falls, though the details of his death are lost in the haze of history. When the struggle ends, every Spartan lies dead. The Persians march onward, but not without cost. The delay at Thermopylae gives Greece time. It plants a seed of defiance. For Leonidas, there was no survival, no throne to return to, no glory to enjoy, only sacrifice. And yet that sacrifice became legend, not because of triumph, but because of endurance. Not because they won, but because they did not break. When you hear of Thermopylae, it is tempting to imagine it as a tale of glory. But when you place yourself there in the dust, in the hunger, in the certainty of death, see what it truly was, an act of discipline, shaped by the same relentless system that made every day in Sparta a test. Welcome. As you settle in, allow yourself to relax. This is not a story of heroes told in shouts and battle cries. This is a slow journey into the world of Sparta, a world both brave and unyielding. Sparta is often remembered as the land of warriors, the place where courage and discipline stood unshaken against overwhelming odds. But the truth, when we look closer, is less glorious. Life in Sparta was not comfortable, not easy, not free. It was rigid, demanding, and often harsh beyond measure. In the hours ahead, we will drift through for explorations. We will begin with the daily life of a Spartan, what it meant to be born there, to grow up under its rules, and to endure its endless discipline. Then we will walk beside a kingly Leonidas through the desperate stand at Thermopylae. From there, we will explore the mysteries of Spartan culture and the fragments that archaeology still whispers to us. And finally, we will see the contrast of Spartan society, the privileged citizens, the enslaved helots, and the unique role of women. Let your body sink deeper into stillness as we begin. There is no rush. The story will unfold slowly, like the rhythm of footsteps echoing down a stone corridor. This is Spartanaut, the myth, not the legend, but the lived reality. Imagine, for a moment, that you are born in ancient Sparta. The year is somewhere in the 5th century BCE. The world outside is quiet, but inside, your life is being judged. From the very first breath, your future is not entirely your own. Elders of the community come to examine you. They look at your body, your strength, your signs of health. If you appear weak, frail, or deformed, you may not be allowed to live. It is not cruelty in their eyes, it is practicality. Sparta, survival begins before you even know you are alive. If you are allowed to live, you enter a household where discipline begins immediately. Spartan parents are not tender in the way we think of today. Mothers are strong, direct, and unyielding. Fathers are often absent, bound by duties of training or war. Even as a small child, you are taught not to cry excessively, not to demand comfort, not to complain. The rhythm of your upbringing is silence, toughness, restraint. By the age of 7, your life changes forever. You are taken from your family and placed into the agoj, the state-run training system that defines Spartan society. Imagine that moment, leaving the warmth of your home, the embrace of your mother, and stepping into a barracks filled with boys just like you. From this point onward, you belong not to your family, but to the state. The agoj is not a school in the way we understand. There are no soft benches, no cheerful teachers. Instead, there is discipline. Your bed is nothing more than reeds gathered from the riverbanks. You lie down on a mat close to the floor, the stone beneath you cold and unyielding. Your cloak is thin. In winter, the chill seeps into your bones. You are expected to endure it without complaint. Food is deliberately scarce. One of the most infamous dishes is the black broth made of pork, vinegar, and salt. It is sour, heavy, and far from satisfying. Hunger is not an accident. It is part of the training. You are encouraged to steal, to fill your belly, but if caught, the punishment is harsh, not because you stole, but because you failed to do it well. In Sparta, failure is worse than dishonesty. Your days are long. The sun rises, and before the light has warmed the ground, you are already outside. Barefoot, you run over rough terrain. The earth is hard, filled with sharp stones that cut and bruise, but shoes are forbidden. Your feet must harden. Your body must learn to ignore pain. Training never stops. Wrestling, running, spear practice, endurance drills, hours of sweat under the Mediterranean sun. The smell of dust fills the air. The sound of boys grunting, of instructors shouting commands, echoes endlessly. There is no escape, no free time. Even learning is shaped by discipline. You are taught to speak as little as possible. A Spartan boy should not chatter, should not ramble. If you are asked a question, you answer briefly, sharply, with wit. The world would later call this laconic speech, named after Laconia, the land of Sparta. Silence is a lesson. Brevity is survival. Punishment is constant. If you falter in training, if you fail to obey quickly enough, the sting of a whip reminds you, not in fury, but as routine, another tool to shape you into obedience. You learn quickly that emotion must be hidden, pain must be mastered. At night, the barracks are filled with whispers. The air smells of smoke, sweat, and the faint tints of oil lamps. You lie awake, your stomach empty, your body aching. Around you, the breathing of other boys fills the dark. Sometimes you dream of food, of warmth, of the comfort of your mother's arms. But those belong to another life. In Sparta, such comforts are gone. The agoge lasts for years. From boyhood to early adulthood, this system carves you into what the state demands: a warrior, obedient and strong. And yet, even when you reach adulthood, freedom never comes. At 20, you become a soldier in full, but you do not yet live at home. You remain in the barracks, eating at communal messes, sleeping beside your comrades. Marriage is permitted, but not yet family life. You may marry a woman, but you are expected to continue living with your fellow soldiers until the age of 30. The barracks remain your true home, the state your true master. And still, daily life offers no comfort. Every meal is communal, simple, repetitive. Every day is training. Every night is discipline. Even laughter is restrained. To live as a Spartan is to surrender individuality, to dissolve into the collective, to endure hardship as routine. This is why it truly sucked to be a Spartan, not because of one dramatic hardship, but because life itself was built on hardship. From birth to death, every moment was measured by endurance, obedience, and the stripping away of comfort.